Welcome to TezTalks Radio. I'm your host, Marissa True, and today I am very excited to be joined by George Goodwin, otherwise known as Oh My God, I Drawed It, the artist behind Tezos' beloved Tezzardz. So, hi, George, how are you today?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. So of course, many people know you by your online moniker, Oh My God, I Drawed It, as well as the Tezzardz you've released into the Tezos ecosystem as of a couple of years ago. But to
Yeah.
drill into your background a little bit, can you tell me more about your journey as an artist?
Yeah, of course. So I was actually from like a creative standpoint, I was a hairdresser. My career path was a hairdresser for a long time. And that is quite a creative job, obviously, and it was quite enjoyable, but it didn't quite hit the creative release needs that I required. So and I'd always been somebody that did a lot of drawing, albeit quite badly for most of my life. Um, and basically, when I was, I think maybe 27, I decided to go back to university, or not go back to university, but go to university for the first time. And I studied at Plymouth College of Art and did a degree in illustration. Um, and yeah, that was quite an experience in itself. Obviously, like being a mature student in a young person's university was interesting. But it also gave me the opportunity to realize that that was kind of something I really wanted to do. So I threw myself into that, and I really went for it. And just in the space of a few years at uni, really developed my illustration style. Um, and yeah, I finished university with pretty good grades, and I was put forward for quite a lot of things, traditional sort of things that you get as an illustrator at the end of university if you've done really well. And I did a few quite big art fairs, and I got acknowledged by a few people that are quite big in the traditional illustration industry. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. I'm gonna hit the ground running. I'm gonna get a maybe get an agent or whatever, and just this is gonna be great. And then kind of the end of summer uni stuff happened, and the couple of magazines that I was in fizzled away, and um, the the general kind of vibe that I was gonna suddenly like make it as an illustrator immediately out of uni started to dwindle a little bit. And I got some pretty cool jobs at the start, and I think right out of uni, I did like the tour artwork for Jack Garrett, who was quite a big, uh, kind of pop star basically at the time. He'd just won a Brit Award, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. This is going to really kind of springboard my career. And yeah, I did that, and it was great. And we got tickets to see Jack Garrett, and that was all cool. And I got paid really badly, and I continued to get paid really badly for the first couple of years um, of my career as an illustrator in the traditional sense. And I
Mhm.
was like, this is hard for me. Like I've got this style that's kind of quite it takes a long time to draw my pieces, so it can be difficult to price that for your traditional commissioner for brands and people that want to use your artwork. So trying to find that middle ground where I was able to get paid reasonably and still make art that I thought was really good and really kind of showed off what I was capable of was quite difficult. And then obviously, I think uh, then I saw Beeple, and I think everybody saw Beeple. Um, that was the thing that kind of made me go like, oh, this is something cool, right? I really like technology. I'm a digitally native artist, so suddenly NFTs have kind of come into my peripherals, and I was like, this is something I want to try. And yeah, I just remember seeing Super Rare, right? And I was like, okay, this is a really cool platform. I love this. It looks awesome. And I started doing the application form for Super Rare, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I think I actually stopped because at the time you had to like send a video of yourself, and I hate that kind of thing, right? So I was like, that slowed me down just enough. And whilst that slowed me down, I noticed quite a lot of stuff was coming out about, once you start kind of following a few things to do with crypto and NFTs on Twitter at the time, it was quite rapid that I was starting to see a lot of stuff about the environmental concerns of Ethereum. And yeah, basically, um, from that, I started speaking to a few people that were involved in Tezos, right? That was, I think, Sutu. He'd made like a, I can't remember if it was a Discord or some sort of group, and he'd made this thing, and I joined it, and it was like, okay, there's this chain, and there's this platform called Hicket Nudge, and yeah, it kind of that was kind of it. I found that, and I was like, right, I'm going to start minting here where it's not bad for the environment, and that was kind of how I came and onboarded myself onto Tezos.
It's interesting that it's quite the classic tale of the artist, like the clearly talented artist that's waiting for their big break, but that big break never really takes the form that you expect it to. And then finding all of these alternative and almost, I guess, quite scrappy and innovative ways to make a living that still sort of supports your passion. And I think, the entry into the blockchain and crypto space was this sort of eureka moment for many. But I think, again, similar to many others, there was this huge barrier to entry when it came to trying to, I guess, not only mint your work, but then to also sort of build your name in an entirely new arena as well. So then, you're very well known within the Tezos community, primarily for the PFP collection you launched, which was Tezzardz. But ahead of Tezzardz, were you already minting your general works? And then what was the initial traction that you got for that? Was that where the momentum originally built, or did you really find your community through Tezzardz?
Oh, I would say 100% in my mind, the my pieces that I was minting pre-Tezzardz was the thing that was getting me noticed. Um, I I had a collection called Bedroom Nostalgia, which I think was the thing that really kind of started to get me noticed on Tezos for sure. Um, I don't know, like that collection. Obviously, I think it struck a nerve with quite a lot of people because of the fact that there was so many similarities in maybe it's kind of an age group thing or what, but people were kind of seeing these bedroom nostalgia pieces. I think they were really like seeing themselves in it and really feeling the emotion of that nostalgia that I was bringing, and that was what really got things going. And and yeah, I think that to me is still a lot of the community that collected those early pieces and collected bedroom nostalgia and some of my other series. I think the time I went inside my head and saw Japan, which was a series of kind of Japanese themed pieces that were based on my experience of Japan that I haven't lived, because I've never been there. So it's all stuff that I invented in my own head and then kind of put that out onto the page, and a lot of people really gelled with those as well. So I think there was quite a big collector community around my pieces, especially those ones in particular. And another piece called The Producer, which kind of still a lot of people call that, like one of Tezos grails. I don't really like to have the grails thing, really. I think it's a weird concept. I think a lot of the stuff in crypto is a very odd concept that I generally can't get behind. But obviously, it's cool. It's cool that people think that that's what that is. It's not personally like I love The Producer, but I wouldn't personally say it's one of my favorite pieces.
Mhm.
It's up there, but it's not my. It doesn't have the same depth or contextual depth that I try to add to a lot of my work. And yeah, but I think maybe the bedrooms do. I think that they tell the story a lot. I like to tell stories, and I think they really told stories that people saw like a real connection with. And I think that's for me, that's a really powerful thing in art. To look at something and really feel like connected in that way because you understand the story yourself, or you see yourself in the story, whether it's supposed to be that way or not, is a really good thing. And I think that's why those pieces really caught a lot of people's attention and you know got me noticed in those early days. So I would say that for me, that kind of period up until Tezzardz was actually almost more. I kind of preferred that community and that collector base because of the
Hmm.
fact that it was more about people learning about me and less
Hmm.
about kind of hype and you know jumping into things without maybe necessarily learning about me or my morals or my story or my kind of concepts. And I think people weren't doing that up until Tezzardz. And then obviously Tezzardz is its own whole other kettle of fish. So yeah, the early days were the early Hickett Nunch days were the one for me, you know.
Yeah, I think it kind of harks back to this sort of emergent community that sort of, I guess, collectively branded themselves as this sort of grunge, underground, alternative, hipster, almost like we march to the beat of our own drum sort of culture that became very characteristic of Tezos. And I think it's interesting that you were saying, you know, you much preferred the chapter in time where people were connecting with your artwork because it was a means of connecting with you as the artist. But then when we introduce, a very controversial field of PFPs and that category of NFTs, like the collectible element of NFTs, it begs the question of, what motivated your entry into that space? Like what drove you to create Tezzardz? What was the original intent behind it? And, how did you actually feel given it came at such a contrast to the way people interacted with your original works on Hicket Nunk?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's been a hard thing for me to kind of come to terms with because elements of it are like some parts of my mind feel that it's like the biggest mistake I've ever made. But then at the same time, um, I was trying to kind of prove a point, I think, and I do feel that I succeeded a lot in a lot of ways with that point. And that kind of at the time, the original Tezzards were there was a conversation between me and a few of my collectors, and it was kind of like I was trying to show that it's all kind of stupid and that Tezos could kind of do the stuff that the other chains were doing and we could do it better and it could be more about the art. And those original ones were kind of created on a hangover and with some banter between me and a couple of collectors. And they were like, okay, this is really cool. We like these. And I minted a few of them on Hickett Nunch, and that was kind of the original thing. And it was sort of a joke. And then obviously Object reached out to me and they were like, we want to do this kind of generative art drop with you. And, we call it a PFP. Um, and I was like, cool, let's do it. Like, let's show the world what Tezos can do. And it was also supposed to be kind of like a bit of a fingers up to the other kind of projects that were like really crappy art and everything about it was about, uh like it all comes down to money, right? It was all like everything needs to be a brand and everything needs to have all this crap that goes with it. And I was just kind of trying to say like, I don't want to say the words that I want to say, but I do want to say them. And that's like I was trying to make something that was actually punk on the punk chain, and that was kind of the original concept. And I'm somebody who I'm very like anti-brand and I don't really like overconsumption. And there's lots of things that I was doing. I come to Tezos, right, because I didn't want to mint on Ethereum because of environmental concerns. So morally, if you even just know that about me, you kind of know already like my direction with things. And I was just trying to do this thing that was like kind of stupid, and it was sort of the conceptual art was that we were going to make this thing that was like the antithesis of brands and kind of put your middle fingers up to the PFP culture. And objects were caught like really down with the idea, and we made these things. And it's this super commercial looking character, and I was like, okay, let's make it like that and purposely make it as anti-brand as possible. I feel like a lot of people supposedly came into crypto for these reasons, but then now we're getting to this point where it feels very capitalist. And I don't know, I just kind of feel like I wanted to do something that kind of had had some meaning and was about something more than just money and like shilling loads of crap and making t-shirts and toys and figurines and utility and additional stuff. And it was all supposed to be this massive fuck you to that stuff. And I think now after 2 years, most people like the thing is, I think most Tezos OGs and the original collectors and people that knew me in Tezos got that. But I think it was the people that came after that, like, and that's what I'm trying to say about like get to know an artist. If you're going to collect their work, get to know them. Don't just say this is a thing that I'm doing, or don't ape into hype. Like just take 2 minutes to learn something about the person that's created the thing and then see that it's supposed to be different, and then you can be happy with what you've got if you decide to still go into it. But I didn't realize that obviously what was going to happen, right? So I'm saying to Object on the calls beforehand, like these things will probably take a couple of weeks to sell out, like no one's going to be interested. We did no marketing. I think I sent like one tweet out before we released them, and then obviously I don't have a clue what's going on because we broke the chain and an entire pandemonium ensued after that, which kind of took me down the pan as well. Like I had really bad mental health problems coming out of the back of that. It wasn't just because of Tezzardz, like that would be unfair to say that it was solely that, but it was a huge part of what happened because I kind of opened this can of worms thinking, right, I'm going to make this thing. It's going to showcase Tezos. It's a portrait picture of the Tezos community. That's what I was trying to build, like let's make this thing that looks like the sassy underdog, the irreverent like people that I was finding on Tezos, that community. That's who it's supposed to represent, those people. And I think I did a good job. I think I achieved what I wanted to in a lot of ways, but you just can't get past the fact that people always try and see it in a different way to you. And I think it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that I fundamentally need to sort of not really give a shit what people think. And I made this conceptual art project, and well, it's the most successful art project that's ever been on Tezos, right? So I should be proud of it. But it took me a long time to get to terms with it.
I think it's very interesting the way you put it, because I think it's a perspective that's very often lost within this space, especially as it relates to mental health. Like, I think a project like Tezzardz has all the classic markers of success, but there's this dark sort of shadow to it that I think you are casting a bit of light on. And I mean, I think for the vast majority who weren't necessarily familiar with your work, it must come at some surprise that Tezzardz were supposed to be this sort of ironic counter to PFP culture, or, like the tagline, no utility, no roadmap, just art, which was often lost on a lot of people because I think people got really caught up in the flipping culture of NFTs without realizing the fundamental utility of art is art itself. Um, and so, of course, there was this huge volume of enthusiasm. There were high prices. There was a lot of trading, a lot of secondary sales. I guess financially for you, it was very lucrative. It was very successful. But if you wouldn't mind sharing, why was there such a dark side to this for you? Was it just because there was this project that you had created that sort of escaped your control, or was it that it just ended up morphing into something that you didn't stand by, and it caused maybe a kind of cognitive dissonance that you found very conflicting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like when you're trying to make something that is supposed to stand for more than just money, and then you watch it become to so many people something that's just about money. It's quite an unbearable thing to watch.
Mm.
Um, and like, yeah, I mean, it was lucrative for me in a lot of respects, but also as somebody that's come from I had nothing to fall back onto, and this wasn't a VC funded project or I didn't get a grant to like put it together or any of this stuff. It's just me in my studio, and it's still just me. The team of OMG I Drawed It in general is just me and my wife. Like it's not we don't it's not this massive thing that some of the other projects are and have, you know. And like I didn't know a lot about, I still don't know a lot about business, and I got absolutely wrecked on taxes. Like I can't even explain, but like I'm far from being able to like sit on the beach for the rest of my life off of the back of that drop, you know. And I think that's the other thing as well, is I think people don't, even with in respect to kind of other projects. I mean, you see a lot of FUD on like other projects on Ethereum, and how certain projects maybe made this like runway of like hundreds of years of um of funding to pay their staff and all that stuff. But like people forget that like in crypto, it's not going straight into your bank account. It's going into like a pot, and then that pot goes up and down in value like crazy. And you can't always get it out exactly when you want to, or at the moment that you need to. It's not the same as normal money. And obviously with massive crashes that happened the last couple of years, a lot of people, including me, that have tried to, you want to have faith in this thing long term, and like trying to balance between like what you take out to live off of and what you keep in, and watching the stuff that you keep in going down and 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 down.
Mm,
And I think like the amount of money that maybe it says that it made on paper compared to what you actually end up with are absolutely massively miles apart. And I think a lot of people, collectors, and just general people in crypto, just see that number. They see the floor price, or they see what, the amount that the project had earned, but they're completely like naive to what actually you end up with. And you take away the taxes, you take away the crashes in crypto, you take away the cost that sending money from one exchange to another to get it out, and the fees and all that stuff, and like you end up with a lot less money, even if you manage to get it out at the exact time that you made it, you know.
mhm.
And I think one thing that I've tried to tell other artists, especially if you're UK based, when it comes to things like taxes, is obviously in the UK, you're charged at the moment that the money comes into your wallet. That's the amount you pay the tax on, not what it is when you take it out. And I didn't know that at the time or at the start. So there were quite a few times where I'd taken stuff out thinking I'll just pay tax on this, not realizing that I'd actually pay tax on this hugely higher number. Um, and yeah, you can end up sitting there looking at like, I mean, God, the guys at HMRC last year, they were having a field day, you know. They took a lot. Um, and I think people will forget about that. So I haven't ended up with this huge runway to kind of continue. I've still got to work my ass off. We're at the moment we're trying to um like me and my wife are trying to open a physical store to try and have a bit of a hedge against the ups and downs in crypto, because nobody knows what's really going to happen. I have faith that everything will, recover, and we are seeing some recovery at the moment, but it's it's a lot of risk, It's I'm not adverse to risk, but also like if you've got nothing to fall back onto, if you've got no fund, you've got no VCs saying like it's okay, we'll keep funding you. Like I had nothing before, and now I'm kind of not really in that much of a better position than I was. And it looks like I should be, and I feel devastated in a lot of ways that I made some mistakes, because for all the stress it caused me, I wish that I was in a better place financially now, because it's almost, for how I felt at one point, for some of the really dark days that I felt, like I almost wish that I'd never done any of it.
Mm.
And that's kind of sad, because I think I think I did set out to do this, I had this vision, and I think that I've maintained the vision at least. So I should be proud of that, I guess.
It sounds like a lot of the devils were in the details with this, and I think you highlight a lot of the practical realities when it comes to, this narrative of crypto being this money-making game that people often neglect to actually pay attention to, like the pragmatic realities of a lot of this. But then when we bring it back to yourself as a creative, yourself as an artist, and I guess the community of fans that really gravitated towards your work, how did that evolve over the course of time? Because once, Tezzardz sort of spiked and then calmed, how were people responding to you and connecting with you over your other work?
Um, I think like a lot of people have always enjoyed my kind of classic OMG I drawed it style pieces. Um, and I did, I'm not going to lie that I didn't get a lot of new collectors and fans from the Tezzardz drop. But in the grand scheme of things, it does seem like a hell of a lot of people have kind of fizzled out in the last year and a half, and it does also make you feel. Um, so I recently minted a piece on Ethereum called "Outliving the Hype," and that was kind of my jovial take on the concept of what it's like being an artist that kind of almost feeling like you've outlived your own hype cycle. Um, and it does feel like that. I think, especially when you're involved in something that is so based on the kind of financial ups and downs of the actual underlying token, and and its price, and yeah, that kind of piece was supposed to be the how it feels to be an artist that's sort of like one minute you're crashing the blockchain with your drops, and then the next minute you can kind of like barely get a like on Twitter. And I feel like a lot of people are in that same boat, um, where the combination of social media algorithms changing and bear markets kind of coming together have just sort of pushed a lot of people away. And I've tried to put out like, I still want to talk to people, let's still be friends, let's try and like be involved in as many events as possible. And I'm still chipping away trying to build my career as much as I can, but I feel like it gets hidden so much now by the social media platforms, and it makes it very difficult to feel like what you're doing is right, or whether you're still going in the correct path. And it's trying to get away from social media and not rely on that so much as a metric for whether you're doing well is obviously such an obvious thing. But at the same time, we live in this world now where it's so heavily intertwined with everything we do, and a lot of the work that a lot of people are making is based on memes and stuff to do with social media. Me especially, a lot of my work has underlying piss takey themes. I'm taking the piss out of the stuff I see. I'm taking the piss out of myself. I'm taking the piss out of the general culture of art as a whole, not just of NFTs. Um, I have this piece that I'm releasing tomorrow for Art Basel, which kind of really is heavily about that. That kind of whole, that how stupid everything is. Um, so yeah, I feel like I hope that if I continue to make these pieces that tell the stories in the way I want, people start to realize there is this slightly more conceptual depth to what I do. And I always find it hard, it's a hard thing to be like this kind of colorful illustrator, but still get people to look past that initial aesthetic and try and get them to find the depth and the context that I'm trying to put into the pieces. And for me, that is the battle, because I think that once people start to see that there's more depth there and understand the story and maybe gel with the story, that's when they kind of come and realize that they like my work more than just on the face value. And I'd rather I had 10 collectors like that than a million that just wanted it because it was easy to flip, or wanted it because it was just something bright and colorful they liked the look of that day. And I don't have a problem either. Like it sounds like I'm saying that I don't want those people. I do, but as an artist, you want to be understood as well. And I just want to have these conversations with people and get understood so that we can all kind of grow together in that sense.
Yeah, I guess there's this sort of pull-push relationship between the sort of community and audience that you can access within the crypto blockchain world, as well as the risk or the counter to that being almost the over commodification of the art that you're actually putting out. And as you said, it sort of can shallow the depth of the work that you put out and basically minimize, the strength of the meaning just because people aren't giving it the right amount of attention or the right amount of active thinking. But then, this, if we look at Tezzardz from a couple of years ago and that entire experience, and then bridge it to now where you are releasing work for Art Basel and you are still quite active on blockchains and minting your work, where does your relationship stand with it now? Because it sounds like, for all of the frustrations and the friction points, there's something that's keeping you within this realm. What is that?
Um, I think it's like feeling a sense of belonging. Like I feel like I've made friends and have been part of communities that I really enjoy, and that's the main reason. I think it's the main reason why I still mint mostly on Tezos as well. Obviously, I was waiting for Ethereum to become um, environmentally friendly, which it obviously has now, and I still only minted a couple of pieces on there. I've always wanted my pieces to be as accessible as possible, really, for people. And I'm in no way like a chain maxi or anything, but like I just feel like Tezos is always going to be home for me. And when I kind of, I suppose I spent a lot of time on social media before I got into crypto art, and never really felt like a sense of belonging anywhere, and couldn't really get people to talk to me about my art. And I always like my physical prints have always sold really well, so I kind of knew that people liked it when they saw it. But there's a lot of gatekeeping in the traditional art world, especially, but also even in just like the traditional illustration world. Like trying to get noticed in that world is difficult, and it's very, because it's so financial. um People don't, I couldn't get another illustrator to share my work in case they shared me to a commissioner and I was picked instead of them, which you find it's very dog eat dog. And I just never really felt like it was like that in crypto, in NFTs. Like everybody's always hyping each other up, and everybody like buys each other's work and is friendly to each other. And it's the environment for me that makes it so endearing to be part of. Um, and although, again, because of the way things have gone, it does seem to be a lot slower, and there seems to be less people active, and there's less conversation. But then at the same time, I think in some ways it's fallen into this slightly better place where it's a lot more, um, it's easier to handle. I think at one point, with regards to my own mental health struggles, I think a lot of that also was to do with the sheer amount of time that me and others were spending both online. I'm working on art all day whilst also being online all day, and then staying up really late, and like everything just goes wrong, because you're kind of not looking after yourself because you're spending so much time working. And I feel like we're in a better place now, where the people that are still here have stayed because they believe in something, and we're just in a kind of nicer place where it feels like a lot of the grifters and scammers and assholes have gone. Um and yeah, it feels like a much better space in a lot of ways. You're still seeing like bits of it, and obviously as soon as there's a bit of hype again, you do see that stuff kind of surfacing. But it feels like a calmer place to be part of now, which is a lot easier to handle from a mental health perspective. And I think probably a lot of people have found that there's a balance you can find between the amount of time you spend on social media and on the marketplaces, and how much time you spend kind of touching grass or making art. I feel like I'm making way more art now than I ever have in my life. And I'm not just minting it every day or sharing it every day because I I don't want to do that, but I want to make art. So I just feel like I'm in a much healthier place, and I think that the space is in a healthier place. And the only thing that I think is not as nice is it does feel a lot more lonely to me now. and I feel like I've tried to integrate myself into a few more events and stuff recently, and I've done a couple of things. I've minted a couple of pieces this week that were for events, and it's kind of nice to be involved in that again. I don't know if I feel sometimes like maybe I get forgotten, or people are maybe afraid to even approach me. I'm not sure really, but it generally just feels like everything is a lot slower now, and that works for me.
So it was essentially the community that really kept you within the Tezos ecosystem. And I like the description you've given, the bear market, because I think it's done in a way that I don't think most would acknowledge, is that there is a calm to the quiet that came with, just less market activity. It felt like during the bull market, everyone was sort of at the crest of a wave and trying to figure out whether they were going to surf all the way down or they were just going to fall. And so restoring this source of, or the sense of balance between your day-to-day life and this digital universe that you've kind of found yourself completely immersed in, is it's difficult to calibrate those two spheres sometimes. So I think it's refreshing to hear that, in times where the market wasn't necessarily its best, it still offered a sort of peace despite it not, I guess, generating the wealth that everyone was excited by and got sucked into, or like the reasons they got sucked into this world in the first place. Um, so with that all being said, where do you go from here? Like, what are the things that you are working on? I know you mentioned this piece that you are minting for Art Basel, but what's kind of on the roadmap for what you want to focus on and how you want to negotiate this balance? Because if we think about it, if the market's sort of picking up momentum again, the risk is that you sort of get caught up in the next hype cycle and then this entire experience repeats itself. But now that you have this sort of insight, how do you want to balance, these two elements of your life?
Well, as I said previously, I think if there is like another hype cycle for me, I'll spend a bit more time um like just not worrying so much about what other people think. Like if you're an artist and you have a vision, and I think I've shown that vision, and I think that like I've proved quite a lot of the points that I set out to with the Tezzardz drop. Um like you know that it can be just a thing, and that's fine, and like people still wanted to get them, they still buy them now. Like it still goes. And if there is this second wave of my art and Tezzard's and anything new that I create, I'm just gonna like stick to my vision and not get influenced by any noise, because I tend to find that generally the vision that I have is the correct one. And you know, I'm kind of pleased that I've realized that, and it's taken a little while to have the confidence to realize that. Um but I think I'll just keep making. Like all I want to do is make art. That's what I'm going to do regardless. And if no one buys my NFTs anymore, then I'll make prints and I'll open my shop and I'll sell prints. And I live a pretty frugal lifestyle anyway. I'm not desperate to be like a multi-millionaire. I just don't care about that stuff. And I don't know why people are so desperately after it themselves. Like people want to be rich, but they don't know why. Like I get that it makes things easier, and that's great, but you can live a pretty nice, happy, healthy life without needing to be a multimillionaire. Um, just as long as you've got things around you that keep you happy. I think like money is one of the things that people are so determined will make them happy, and then it just doesn't. So find the things that make you happy, and I think that's what I've done with art. Like I love making art. It's a it's a truly like Zen experience for me when I get into the kind of flow of making one of my big detailed pieces. I just like lose myself in it, and it's so meditative, and um, it's like such a nice existence when I'm in that world. So I would just want to keep doing that. And I don't really care about any of the other stuff. In God's honest truth, like I just don't. And I hope that like more people kind of start to feel that same feeling, and we find each other, you know? So yeah.
I mean, I think it's very refreshing to hear because, again, I think the dominant narrative is always this idea of new means of wealth generation or greater means of financialization for artists. There's always this sort of economic subcurrent that's driving a lot of why people kind of get bought into the Web3 space, and it's easy to forget that it kind of extends way beyond that, as we were mentioning earlier, with regards to the sense of community and belonging that you can find in these online spaces. And it sounds like, for all of this experience, both good and bad, the output was that you sharpened your conviction as an artist, and you got this greater sense of self-assurance as it relates to your own talent and your own creative voice. So I wouldn't be surprised if your work stayed as popular as it generally has been. Um, Before we wrap up this interview, I just want to ask, is there anything you'd actually like to say to the Tezos community that's listening, or kind of point them in the direction of where they should find more information about you and where they can collect your work, either digital or in print?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously I have like an unbelievable amount of thanks to give to the Tezos community, to the people that have supported me since I first started minting, and to like the OGs that have been there and supported me and collected Tezzards and believe in Tezzards, and to the people that have collected Tezzards and believe in something, like remember like why you kind of came to crypto, maybe why you what you believed in Tezos in the start. Don't forget those things, some things, some values and morals are more important than just like than money. That's one of the main things I would say. I see so much FUD for Tezos at the moment, and I know we've been out the back of a massive bear market, but like just remember, like, be here for a good time and enjoy yourselves, and try not to get so caught up in the kind of number go up mentality, because it's just so bad for your brain. And like, some things are more important, having a good time, making friends, and collecting beautiful art for pennies. This is things you can do on Tezos, and I'm so incredibly grateful for that, and grateful for those people, the artists, the collectors, anybody that's shown interest in me, really, ever, like, as somebody who kind of changed their career path and did this thing and took a huge risk. I'm so grateful for the people that have found my art and enjoy it, and I hope that I can continue to make people happy with my art going forwards. Um, Obviously, if people do want to continue buying my NFTs, they are available on Object. I have a couple of things on Ethereum, and I'm probably going to mint on some other chains over the next year or so. But also, I do have a physical print store. You can get prints from me if you live in the UK. There's a few shops you can get them in. There's a couple of shops in Nottingham and Exeter. We're about to obviously open our own shop in the new year. And yeah, find me on Big Cartel if you want to buy a print. And yeah, I mean, I I don't know what else to say, really. I am super grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and I do feel sad that I had to kind of take a bit of a moment out, when I guess I was like right at the pinnacle of things. But also, that whole experience with my health and how bad I felt has made me completely different now, in both a good and bad way. And I think that it's made me look at things very differently. And I hope that other people that are struggling, both artists or collectors, if you're like struggling financially with things as well because of putting a lot of faith in something and it's come down, just try and take a step back and remember what's important, and hopefully everybody on the planet can be a bit happier.
I think that's a really, really, really important lesson for a lot of people to hear. And I'm glad that it sounds like of you're sort of on the brighter end of what's been a bit of a dark tunnel. It sounds like you're doing much better. And it's also sounds like you have a lot going on still, whether it's within the crypto space or beyond, when it relates to your art and your, I guess, increased ability to create. It sounds like you have more inspiration than ever. So I think everyone's going to be staying fairly close to your work and seeing what you churn out. But thank you so much for sharing your perspectives today. I think it was refreshingly honest and very, very real for a space that's often kind of shrouded by masquerade. I think it's an important lesson and an important message for a lot of people to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me and for thinking of me. And if anyone else wants to talk to me or do any interviews or whatever, then that's cool. Like, we can figure it out. And if you're a collector or a fan, obviously, you want to talk to me on Twitter, I'm there.
Amazing. Well, George, thank you so much. And until we speak again, have a great week.
Thank you. You too. See you soon.